dreams present.
I found the perfect soil sample and planted the mighty seed. It's growing.
Soil sample.
The one you sent. The box with no delivery note.
I didn't send anything. Reported to security and move on.
This could mean there's life on the outside.
You are not qualified to determine that. Forward your work to the science lab.
I'd like to apply for an exit visa to go outside. If I could find the original soil, I could...
The outside is dead.
But the soil is alive.
Take your dreams pieces.
But I know it's alive. It has to.
You were compromised by your illness. You should have taken your medication.
I have been taking them.
I can't help you anymore.
What about the plan?
I hope you all enjoyed the film. Now we are going to have a conversation of the filmmaker, Wanuri Kahiu, in conversation with scholar Rachael Diang'a. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's been amazing watching this film once again. I think I've been watching it a lot the last few weeks, and every time I watch it, I see something new. One unique thing today is that we have Wanuri in the house to talk to us about the film, and so I think this is going to be an amazing moment. Wanuri, I would like to introduce you in a very small way, and then you'll introduce yourself better, because I know there are things going on right now, and we probably don't know, so bear with me if I don't say everything, but I just want to introduce to you the director of the film, Wanuri Kahiu, and Wanuri is, the first film I watched from Wanuri was called From a Whisper, and I loved it as a film scholar. My name is Rachael Diang'a, I'm a film scholar. Most of you know me. I'm a Nairobian. I work in Nairobi. I teach film production and film studies at USIU Africa. Before that, I was teaching film at Kenyatta University. So it's always a pleasure to talk about film. It's always a pleasure to talk about filmmaking in Kenya and by Kenyans. And so I just want to very briefly introduce Wanuri. I will not say many things, but we know that I will call her a director. I don't talk of Kenyan director. A director, she's a film director, she's a film producer, she is an author of a book, she is a script writer, she has won so many film awards and nominations, has been nominated, that if you want to know about this, I think we will have another session, talk about her nominations and awards. So for now, allow me to just say that she is the director of From a Whisper. She, in 2008, which was based on the bombing of the US Embassy in Kenya and in Tanzania. Then she directed and wrote the film we just watched, PUMZI, 2009. We all know about Rafiki, 2018, and there are many others which she may want to talk about at some point. She's a graduate of the University of Warwick and also University of California, Los Angeles. So, Wanuri, would you want to tell us more about yourself? I know I just touched the tip of the iceberg.
No, there's not much more to say. I'm a filmmaker. And what pleases me the most is this is the first time my children have been old enough to watch the film. So my children are here watching the film for the first time. Yeah, so I'm a mother, a wife as well, and a filmmaker.
Thank you, and welcome to the session. So the way we are going to run, we are going to just I'll ask her a few questions just to understand, or to make us understand better how her engagement with the film was and has been. And then we'll have a session later for the audience to ask questions. So if you have questions, put them down and you'll have a session with that. So Wanuri, first and foremost, this is a very unique film. When I first watched it, I was like, okay, people are making these kind of films. And did you say she's Kenyan? Okay. So I wanted to know what really motivated you to get involved with this production. I can see you are the director, you are the writer, and probably many other things that are not indicated. So what really motivated you?
When I started writing PUMZI, I can't remember when that was, it was really because I was very interested in the conversation about our relationship with nature, and us being the mothers of Mother Nature as well. And I was curious about exploring how we fit in with our environment and how we've become quite selfish about our ability to take but not to give back. So there's a lack of reciprocity at the moment in our lifestyles. And I just wanted to examine it, but it really originally started because I really don't like bottled water, because it takes more water to make the bottle than the water in the bottle. And also I started to question why we pay for water. It's a naturally free, it's a free natural resource. And so I started to investigate what kind of world would we be in when water became a high value commodity. And that led me to the creation of PUMZI and the world of PUMZI.
Right. So it's amazing that you looked at issues that happen in society, simple things as drinking bottled water, and then at the end of it, we're going to throw away this or maybe recycle them or all that. But these are simple things that we meet every day, and these are things that are happening in society, but many of us, sometimes we just walk by and drink and move on and throw them in the bin. Whoever takes care, takes care. Isn't it so amazing that as a filmmaker, you stop and think about some of these issues and get them also inspiring you to make your art? So my question, therefore, is, as a filmmaker, film is a medium of communication, of entertainment, and many other things. So how has this happened in your other works, that film becomes, therefore, an avenue through which you speak to society, through which you speak about things that happen in society?
I think life is inherently political. I don't go out to make films about any like to prove a point or to make a message or anything like that. I write because most of the things that inspire me are the things that really annoy me at the same time, and I want to explore them, and I want to understand why we think or feel like that. And that's why I create, just like any other artist. I think we just create in response to the world that we live in. And that's what I do. But I think that film is inherently political because we're making stories about people. And people are of a certain gender, they're of a certain race, they're of a certain tribe, they're of a certain class. And inherently, if you're a black woman, you're making a political film just based on the fact that you were born black and female. So it's not, I'm not going out to do it, it's just living and observing.
And expressing. All right, thank you for that. Now, would you say this is sci-fi genre? Okay, because it's always good, when you have when you have the artist next to you, it's good to ask. As critics, we talk a lot and we paint so many pictures of what we see, and then when you get an assist, it tells you, no, I didn't even think about it as sci-fi, I didn't even think. So it's good you say that. So what do you think, therefore, this is not a very well-entrenched genre or way of making films in this part of the world. So my question, therefore, is that how do you see, or how do you think filmmakers, artists generally, should utilize sci-fi and other emerging genres, other emerging ways of doing things to tell their stories?
Well, I challenge the fact. First, can I just ask my children to please sit carefully, quietly? Thank you. Okay. Science fiction. Oh, I challenge the idea that science fiction doesn't come from this part of the country, or fantasy, or mythical realism. That's not true. We've seen it in our literature all our lives. The fact that we have legends are either mythology or science fiction but if you were to define them, right? We have Ben Okri. Ben Okri has been writing all sorts of types of however you want to define it, whether it's fantasy or science fiction or mythical, even Wanuri Kahiu, we have a history of people who have been making different genre types of content. We've just started to define it now. And give it labels, but we've been creating from the moment anybody could tell a story. We were telling science fiction stories, and we were telling fantasy stories. It's nothing new to us. I'm just, my choice of storytelling is filmmaking, and that's why it feels new, but that's not because it's new at all. So yeah, I would challenge that. I would say that storytelling has always been in the African zeitgeist, and stories of different types have always been part of our storytelling language, and mine is just a continuation of that.
Right, thank you. And technically speaking, this film is quite well put together. And taking it back to 2009, for that matter, what was the secret of getting it so well done?
I'd like to think all my films are well put together.
We are talking about this one, 2009.
No, I think that once you have a vision and you have the right support system and the right crew, I think that anything is possible. And this is what happened with this. It's what happened with From a Whisper. It's what happened with Rafiki. It's what happened with the latest film of mine that was released on Netflix, Look Both Ways. It just happens because you are surrounded by the right team, right creativity to be able to get a job done. And I was really, really lucky to have found the company that worked with me on this film.
So if I get it right, the secret is just to get the right people together?
And to have a vision.
And to have a great vision, okay. Yeah. Thank you. And that, I've seen that this film, the budget was $35,000. And so with that, one would still think that, wow, with that kind of budget, quite small, and you got such an amazing, stories on point, and technically it's great. So is there anything else you want to say to that, the budget?
I think that when you think about budgets, especially small budget films like this, it's never that, right? The cash money that we had was $35,000, but a lot of people invested their time, a lot of people invested their expertise, and that wasn't quantified. The post-production team almost worked for free while they were making the film. So it's more than that. I think that we also have to value the time and the effort that people put in, and the donations, and that's what made up the film.
All right, great. Now, looking at that was then. This is now about 13 years later. Do you feel like the future the future projected in the film, do you feel like it's already happening now?
I mean, some of the headlines that we have had in the film were real headlines from the time about the last tree being cut down. And unfortunately, our relationship, as we know, with global warming our relationship with nature has not necessarily improved. I truly hope that the children in our lives have a better future than what is forecast. But I can't say I'm also deeply dismayed. Because right now we're going through such a hard drought, so it seems to me that in time, because water is such a precious commodity, we will be fighting for water, and we will be marking our territories based on where the water is, and that's what the basis of this film was, is that there were no more countries, there were just territories based on where the closest water resource was. So I think that things in the future will change depending on where our natural resources are and what is life, so we'll move towards water.
All right. So just one final question, as I also need to give, they are more than I am, so they must be having a lot of questions, and I need to give them some time, and we are also running out of time. Probably you've answered this partly, but do you feel like you've achieved the objective of making the film?
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to start a conversation, and I really wanted to investigate the things that I was feeling. And through making the film and through the writing of the script, it took me 2 years to write the script. And through the creation of the film itself, I think that I answered my questions, but I also started to ask questions. And there's a writer whose words really kind of like give me energy. And in one of his books, Letters to a Young Poet, he says to live the questions. And that's what I'm trying to do. I try and ask questions in the films, and then I try and live the questions and see where the answers come from.
I think you're sharing something, Wanuri, that I think if there's a filmmaker in the house, we need to think about that. You said it took you about 2 years to write the script for this short film. Sometimes we are so much in a hurry. And we all, probably not all, but it should be that the story, the amount of time you spend on the story, the amount of time you spend on the script matters a lot more than the way we rush through the script and then we rush into the technical. So I think you're telling us something that we need to take home and we need to think about more seriously as filmmakers. In Kenya, operating from Kenya, it takes a lot of time to invest in the story for it to become this timeless. Honestly, this is timeless. So thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
And please let's appreciate her. Thank you. And I know there are many questions I can see. It's reflective.
Okay, hi, my name is Mwendengao. I am a writer and a filmmaker. This is really nice to have you here. So I currently actually got a funding to do a climate short. So the question I have for you is, when I watched this film a couple of years back, I thought, my goodness, like there's hope, but it's kind of bleak. And I know like right now you're trying to do a lot more joyful kind of films. And so the film I'm doing is more solar punk. And so I'd really love to know your thoughts around that in terms of like, yes, we want to talk about climate change and to make films that matter, but how do we tell films that, yes, we're talking about serious issues, but still kind of give people hope and help in terms of reimagining our world? How do we feed into that without making it seem so bleak?
All right, the next, I can see the mic is here.
It's an honor to be able to talk to you. I've long been a fan. My name is Joya. And my question was, you have this philosophy that you've come up with, or you propagated Afro bubblegum, and I see, even though the film is bleak, I see that sort of optimism in a lot of your work. So could you elaborate on that philosophy? Thank you.
Thank you. And the third one, with the mic.
I'll start with the fact that I literally love you so much and you're so beautiful in real life. So I have about 2 questions. The first one's really short, it's really simple. She said that you went to Warwick and then UCLA. Did you study film in those universities, or did you study something else and then realize you wanted to go into film? And my second question is that, okay, I'm gonna allow you to toot your own horn here, but this industry is really hard and you've been really successful. And my question is, what makes you different from other people who are trying to get into this industry, and what made you successful and be as self-loving as you can in that one?
Thank you. I think the 2 questions at the beginning are kind of similarly linked in terms of hope and optimism. So yes, I started a part of I don't know what to call it. It's more like a movement called Afro Bubblegum, which is fun, fierce, and frivolous African art, because we have the right to imagination, we're imaginative people, and we don't only have to talk about things that are horrible and devastating. Right? And there's been a history of us as African artists through the continent where we're constantly imaginative, frivolous, and fun, right? I believe in utopias. I believe in creating utopias for our future because there needs to be stories of hope. And just like you were saying, even though this story is dark and bleak, the fact that this woman sacrificed her life in order to give life to a tree, I think is optimistic, and it speaks to our ability as humans to sacrifice what we need so that our future generations, or so that we're giving more to the world than we're receiving in some ways, right? So as you start your journey on your film about climate change, I'm so glad that you're doing that. I think that for me, what I look for is characters, because I'm so inspired. I'm inspired by Wangari Maathai, obviously, right? But I'm so inspired by people who are actively trying to change the world. So I try and make characters who, in one small way, are trying to change the world, and then that gives me hope, right? In that way. And to speak further on Afro Bubblegum, I just think that it's so vitally important to see stories of joy and hope, so that we have something that we're moving towards, and so that we have something to reach for. Because if we continuously see images of ourselves in devastation, then that's all we'll know that we are, and we won't. We have the right to joy, and we have the right to hope just like anybody else. And so we need to create more images of hope and joy, so that we believe that we are worthy of that hope and joy ourselves. And that's what I want to do that's the service in film that I would like to be part of, is to create more spaces of hope and joy in the work that I create. Especially when it comes to conversations about women, and conversations about people of color, and conversations about people who are considered minorities. There has to be ways that we encourage ourselves to be part of a world that is caring, hopeful, kind, and that we embody our national motto, which is peace, love, and unity, truly. And I hope for that to happen in the work that I continue to do. The question was about how I think I'm just hard-headed. I think I told myself, because film is a hard industry regardless. I'll give you an example. I went to UCLA, and in my graduate class, we were a class of 21 students. I think 2 of us have continued in film, or 2 of us have continued in directing since. People have worked in the industry in various ways, but there's only 2 of us who continue directing. So film is a hard industry to get into, regardless, and so are the creative arts. Whether you're a writer, an author, it's really, really hard. So you have to find a support system. I have had the absolute joy and luck of meeting my life partner, who has been supportive as long as I can remember. Truly, he would, even when I was, he took me to my film school interview, you know? So I've had the really, really a deep privilege of being surrounded by people who love and support me, which is, there's nothing more than that, because the world keeps telling you no. So have people who believe in you and who say yes to you, right? And then I was just hard-headed. I convinced myself that there was nothing else in this world I could do. I couldn't sit at a desk. I convinced myself. So when I wasn't writing, in the 2 years that I was writing PUMZI, and in the 7 years I was writing Rafiki, I would take any other job in the industry, making documentaries for NGOs, making commercials, and then I would take a job and then use that money to pay rent, and then that time allowed me to just write. So I was constantly investing in myself. But it took me a long time to actually start feeling like I'm making an indent in my own life and moving in the direction that I'd like to. So truly, like, my first properly paid job was after Rafiki was released, because in 7 years, there's no money that you're making a film over 7 years. So my first true paycheck was 11 years after I started being a filmmaker. So it was truly like a proper paycheck that I could, like, pay bills and even buy a dress, you know what I mean? Rather than being just a constant hustler, you know? And I think it was just because I kept on working so that I can write, or working so that I can make a film, and I just kept on investing in myself. And I really, really encourage any author, filmmaker, writer, anybody who's in the creative arts to try and find ways to do this for themselves.
All right, thank you. Well answered, I believe. I can see where the mics. Yes, please go ahead.
What do you think sci-fi allowed you to do for this film? Because as you mentioned, the headlines were already there, could have been more set in the present. So what did sci-fi allow you to do and accomplish with this film? Number two, the execution is beautiful and it really meets the challenge of sci-fi in terms of the casting, in terms of the staging, in terms of the wonderful clothing. How, as a director, did you get everyone into your vision? For a film that I don't think had been seen in Kenya, how did you get people, from the people making the clothes, again, to the staging, to the graphics? How did you get people onto your vision in a way that could execute what you had in your mind? Thank you.
Could you get two more, if you don't mind, Wanuri?
Hi.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I guess my question is, right now you're very, very successful. So if you can just take us back to when you were starting out and when you didn't know what would become of the dreams that you have in your head, how did you deal with self-doubt then? Because you see, now you have like history. You can look back and say, well, I did this, so this will work out. But when you have no history, how did you deal with self-doubt? Thank you.
Okay, hi. I really loved Look Both Ways, and you've talked about how you want people to tap into that joy and the hopefulness of storytelling. And I found it interesting, and I was curious how your own journey with motherhood and filmmaking and the creative industry informed the story that you gave us. I found it to be really inspiring and even really moving, especially when you talk about giving people second chances and even the chances that the main character gets in that entire film. So yeah, I'd love to hear about motherhood, film making. How did that go for you?
Okay, thank you so much. First question, science fiction. When I started making PUMZI, I didn't know I was writing science fiction. It was only halfway through that I stopped and I started asking the producer what genre it was. And then he defined it for me. Science fiction means things that can happen in science, that there's a probability of them happening. And fantasy for me was just like things that can't happen that are crazy or whatever. And I knew because my mother's a doctor, my husband is a doctor. I've been surrounded by science a lot. So I've always been curious about the possibilities of what could happen in the future. So for me, it allowed me to explore the possibilities of the future. And I am deeply interested in as deeply interested in history, what has happened to us in the past, as a futurist. So if I could make the kinds of shows that I would love to make, I would truly probably only deal with a past and the future. And so science fiction fits very neatly into futurist work. And you had another question? Oh, yes. Okay, so I research a lot. So for every movie, I do a lot of research. I could have told you what kinds of material are the most absorbent. So when I was talking to the costume designer, I said the material needs to be absorbent because she needs to be able to wipe her body and squeeze it out. So then I had a list of all the different types of material that were absorbent at the time and what kind of technology is out there. I also started reading about just the makeup, what futurists say about what we will be living like in the future, and then I was able to use that. And even with the graphics, I just started really going into futurist worlds and where we are and things like that. And then I used that to inform the conversations with my heads of department. And that's happened through my career, is that I do lots of research so that when I turn up on my first day of meetings, I have an understanding of what everything is, right? The next question was, yes. Self-doubt. Oh, I still suffer with that. I think every artist must, you know? And especially between PUMZI and Rafiki, because it was such a long time that I was just like, how can I call myself a filmmaker when I haven't made a film, you know? So a friend of mine just said to me, do something small. Just do a small project that you can finish from start to end, and then you can release it. And that's when I wrote a children's book, because at least I felt like I was doing something. So whenever I have self-doubt, I try and work on something that is very small and very manageable, so that at least I know, well, at least I can do this. Even if it's a bad short story, at least I can do it and complete it. And then that gives me confidence to move on, because then it just builds up your portfolio. And as artists, we're only as good as our portfolio and as our last work. So the only way through self-doubt is to keep creating, for me. And that has been helpful to me. You had a question about Look Both Ways, and motherhood. I think that it's certainly a challenge, right? And again, I can only thank my husband for being just the awesome person that he is, that he's helped me navigate through it. But when we were making Look Both Ways, myself and the children moved to Austin. We made the film there. But most recently, in the last project that I made, which is a TV show based on the adaptation of a book called Washington Black, and it's a TV show for Hulu. It was such a long project that I couldn't travel with the children. So you're constantly dealing with guilt and trying to manage guilt in a way that all women do when it comes to work and motherhood. But I think the thing that has helped me most, again, is just to be surrounded by people who believe in my career and who support me. And that's how, because it truly takes a village to raise children, and I have a good village.
All right, thanks for that. We still have just about 10 minutes, so who has the mic?
So with each of your projects, you've chosen very unique stories, and being a literary festival, is there any Kenyan or African book that you find unique enough to make a movie? And how would you judge a book as being worthy for a movie?
I love adaptations. I love book adaptations. I think because they're already set in a world that has already been created, I'm constantly on the search for new books and books that can be adapted. When I'm looking for books, usually I look, except Washington Black, which is truly an anomaly for me because I've never directed a film with a male lead. So Washington Black was the first film I directed with a male lead. But usually I tend to look for strong female leads. I'm very curious in history, and I'm very curious in the future, so those are the things that I tend to be drawn to. I always look for hope and joy, and I love a love story. So those are the kind of things that kind of guide me and lead me when I'm looking for stories. But I'm constantly on the hunt, also because the world now is so interested in IP and adapting intellectual property that's just the way of the future. But I am so eager to look for books, always.
All right. Thank you for
Hi,
that.
My name is Abdi. My question is really brief. I am asking about the funds. You said you had a limited amount of funds, and it was partly funded by Changamoto Arts. How did that go, basically? Did they reach out to you? Did you reach out to them? How was that process?
So as an independent filmmaker, I'm always looking for grants. It's one of the things that I constantly research. In fact, I have a little tab that says grants. So whenever I'm constantly looking, constantly asking. So when the Changamoto Fund came about, I asked about it, I found out about it, I found out that they were willing to fund films, and then I got into it, you know? And I was successful in getting into it because it was a hard fund to get into. But I'm constantly looking for grants and funds as an independent filmmaker, because that's the only way that you can try and make your films at the moment, like and try and find any money to try and help you make your films. So I'm constantly applying until now. The people who apply, who give out funds, they know you, and so they'll reach out and say, oh, there's another fund coming up if you want to apply, you know, and you get on there. But for an example, for Rafiki, there's funds that we kept on being rejected, and we would still go back to them. So you're rejected this year, we say thanks, do you have notes on how we can be better? And the funder will give you notes. And then you say, okay, and then the next time you prepare your application or your script or whatever to make it better so that it can meet criteria, you know? Unless it's opposed to your creative ideology, you know? But I'm constantly looking for funds in order to make independent cinema because that's the only way independent cinema at the moment survives. So it was just part of that. It was just part of my research into funding process.
All right. Is there any burning question? Someone who says, I can't go back home with this, it's going to burn my house. Can see one burning question here. Any other burning that we must take? Yes, there's a lady here, please. Here, and then there's a lady somewhere at the back.
I'm Ali Ramadan, and my question was, you, from all the films you adapted, the embassy bombing and everything, how is it challenging for you to like take real life events from like the past and use them in the, is there like, do they come to you and like, no, you cannot put this part of the story or maybe, or yeah, how?
I use everything. I use everything. I used to walk around with a diary and record overheard conversations. I use everything. I use experiences that happen in my life. I use things that have happened to my family members. My first short film was Rastar. That was for Mnet, and that was 100% based on Nazizi, a story that Nazizi told, and I was just like, that is so funny, I'm making it into a film. I use everything. Nothing is off limits, but as an artist, I feel like you must. That's the only way that you can. You have to use everything in your world in order to create work.
Thank you.
Right.
I feel like current conversations surrounding change making tends to be rooted in like the collective, right? But in your film, your character goes out alone, and I'm wondering what that kind of, I guess, is rooted in, and why that was the choice you made in your film. Yeah.
Wangari Maathai. I can only like keep referring to Wangari Maathai because as much as we want community change, and I am all for community change, it always needs one rebel. It always needs one person to decide to go against the grain. It always needs one person who's willing to fight. Because I remember in an interview with Wangari Maathai when she was fighting at the University of Nairobi for equal pay for women, there were no women fighting with her. She was the only one. So sometimes it's hard for the community to take a risk. And sometimes it's just one bull-headed individual that's willing to take a risk and make a change. And those are the people who interest me. The people who are willing to stand up against the community and say, no, I know the norm is this, but I don't think it's right, you know? And challenge it. And that's why my characters are always drawn to people who are willing to... There's a poem by Lucine Clifton where she says, what have you traveled towards more than your own safety? I'm always curious in people who travel towards something more than their own safety. And those are the stories I'd like to tell. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Wanuri, and for being here, finding time to be here. Thank you, Wanuri's children, for accompanying her. And really, I want to appreciate each and every person who participated in this session. The audience, we are a full house, and finding time on a Sunday at this time, it's lunchtime. Sunday, it's lunchtime. Two problems, but you are all here and asking questions to the end. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, and I want to thank the organizers for organizing this kind of a session. Honestly, this is very important and very informative. I'm sure many people are going home with different things to think about. So, thank you.
It's such a pleasure. Thanks.